I will call the February 5th Building and Zoning Committee meeting to order. It is 9:31 and we'll jump right into it. Item number one is Zoning Hearing Board agenda items for February 10th, 2025. The first appeal is number 24-3779, Kingsman Corporation for 347 and 349 East Church Road. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Sekawangu for a quick overview.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is slated before the Zoning Hearing Board next week, specifically regarding constructing a driveway that will be in the steep slope area. There's also a bit of disturbance of a wall that's in front of Church Street that is potentially historic. The property itself has been recommended as part of the historic properties in the township because it's one of the oldest ones. But anyway, the applicant is online. I'll turn it over to Ms. Steers to elaborate a little bit on what is being proposed.
Thank you very much, Director. And I encourage Director Sekawandu to chime in. We did appear before the Planning Commission, I believe on January 28th, if that was the correct date. He was present there and offered some very considerate feedback at that meeting, and we're more than happy to incorporate that into our discussion this evening. My name is Sarah Steers, S-T as in Tom, E-E-R-S. I am counsel for the applicant. We also have the engineer available with us this evening to answer questions. We are here this evening for 347 and 349 Church Street. I'm sure you're familiar with the property, but 347 and 349 Church Street is one structure. It's a twin dwelling. It traverses two parcels. I don't know if you want the TMP numbers or if you want me to keep this moving forward.
No, you could move it along.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Spears.
The original structure dates back to 1776, and the addition, the twin, dates roughly to 1875. Both were constructed directly on the right-of-way with no setback, and given the age of the structure, it is a lawful non-conforming use. Again, also given the age of the structure, there was really no reason to contemplate off-street parking at that location. But now we are concerned with off-street parking. The property owner is rehabilitating the property such that it will eventually be sold to, each half of the twin dwelling will be sold to two different owners. And when this property is suitable for residents, they seek to have a shared driveway for the future residents to ensure their life safety. The same way this township is entrusted with the life safety of its residents. I think we are all familiar with Church Road, and we are concerned that residents would be putting their lives in the hands of the motorists every time they would try to access their residence. I think we're all in agreement that we're encouraging this beautiful home to be restored and lived in and loved, but not at the expense of anyone's safety. And we are also concerned with the inevitability of a potential family being in either half of this twin dwelling. We are also concerned about kids getting on and off school buses. You know, there's always that image of a kid running out of a parent's grasp. And I think we are all very interested, at least the property owner is, and we are hoping that that everyone here this evening is receptive to the need for off-street parking at the location. I think we also want to present to you all this evening that we are very receptive to the June 27th, 2024 zoning determination request. We have been over that considerably. We are well aware of all the requirements and needs that have been expressed in that letter, and we are more than willing, capable, and encouraged to incorporate all of that into our next steps. Again, for the sake of brevity, I will not outline that letter. You have that in that packet, but at the Planning Commission meeting, we went over what we would do in detail to accommodate and fulfill the parameters of that letter. And I think we also want to touch on some of the questions and concerns that came up at the Planning Commission meeting. I do want to let you know that one of the questions and concerns was whether this was officially a historic home, given its age, and it is simply just an older home. We did look at the Cheltenham zoning map. It is not in any one of the historic districts in Cheltenham. And I also looked at both the Pennsylvania, I looked at both the Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office, as well as the National Register of Historic Places. And this property is not on any list maintained by either of those entities. I think we all respect the age of the home, and we want it to be restored gracefully and keeping with the age and the tenor of the home. But it is not officially on any historic registry. Some of the other questions that came up before the Planning Commission also included things like the June 2024 letter requested that that there be a shared driveway easement recorded with the Recorder of Deeds. With the Planning Commission meeting, there was also the notice that if stormwater management facilities traversed the two parcels, that those stormwater management facilities also be recorded with the Recorder of Deeds. There was also some communication that if the retaining walls that were needed in order to support the driveway were of such a height that they required fencing, guard fencing at the top of the retaining walls, that a variance would be needed for said fencing at the top of the retaining wall. That was acknowledged at the Planning Commission meeting. Also, the engineer was present and he is familiar with that request as well. So I think that we are trying to be receptive to all of the points that everyone is presenting with us in order to move forward with this project. And I would like to open it up to the engineer to answer any of questions that you may have for him or this project this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Steers. Mr. Brensinger, if there's anything else you want to add, please feel free to do so. But if you want to open it up for questions, I think that's probably appropriate at this time.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, I'll just give a quick synopsis that the plan that we propose is more or less a sketch plan to show this is what we want to do. We didn't do a full design yet. You know, we fully anticipate to have, you know, structural designs on the walls done, stormwater management testing, all that stuff will follow after, you know, we receive zoning relief. We didn't get too far ahead of ourselves. Yeah, we're basically here for use of, you know, the addition of the driveway in a steep slope area is what we're here for, really.
So I'm going Mr. Sekwanga, this is in Ward.
I believe it's in Ward 6, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're
My
right.
ward.
Yeah.
Your ward. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Ziegenfeld, Commissioner Ziegenfeld, as well as you, Commissioner Rappaport. But I do have a couple of questions. Mr. Brunsinger, do you anticipate needing some sort of PennDOT approval to establish a new driveway on Church Road? By the way, it's road.
Yes.
It's not street, it's road. But Church Road.
Yeah, we don't have that labeled on the plan, but Church Road there is a PennDOT road, so we will require a minimum use driveway permit. Okay,
and obviously this project would be contingent upon that, correct?
Of course.
Okay. In addition to the obvious, the steep slope infringement, which concerns me, the notion of that the twins may not be owned by the same owner and potentially require both easements and perhaps other difficulties in terms of access, storm water, that sort of thing, which concern me as well. I'm in particular concerned about the location of the driveway at this particular spot on Church Road. It is a pretty heavily trafficked road. It's a pretty narrow turning radius to left or right at a proposed driveway. I'm pretty sure there's a road, if not across the street, intersecting Church Road, pretty adjacent left or right. And it just seems to me that it's a dangerous proposition to put a driveway, again, a steep driveway and with the other issues at this location. So I do have some concerns. I was wondering if maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
So yeah, I mean, we have similar concerns. Part of the tentative grading design, we did flatten out the end of the driveway closest to the right of way. So, in case of wet roads or slippery roads, it would, approach Church Road at less of an incline than maybe, the longer part of the driveway. We did propose a 16-foot wide driveway to give a little bit more width there. That was also one of the Montgomery County Planning Commission comments about driveway width reduction, which we will consider reduction of the driveway width, which would limit some of the on-site impervious area, but we would keep the throat of the driveway where it intersects Church Road to be that full 16 feet. So there's adequate room that if people are coming and going, there's some room to navigate and negotiate around each other, and it also sort of clear up the sight lines, give them a little bit more room to see. We will prepare site distance plans and anything that we would need to achieve the PennDOT permit, and if there's any restrictions, turning restrictions, we would be at their mercy basically as far as what they have to say.
Okay. Thank you for that. Before I turn it over, maybe this is to Mr. Lynch or perhaps Mr. Sekawangu. Are there currently any zoning violations on this particular property? I don't know that it's necessarily entirely material, but it's certainly worth knowing.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Good evening. I'm Scott Lynch. I'm the fire marshal and the director of building and codes. Currently, for this property, there is outstanding violations
Okay.
under our property maintenance code. There's been citations issued to the owner that have not yet been satisfied.
Okay.
Just recently, as early as after the last snowstorm, the sidewalks were never shoveled. The township's been out there to cut the grass. We've been ghosted by the owner as far as response. And I will make sure that regardless of the decision of the zoning hearing board, there will be nothing issued from Cheltenham Township until all that is satisfied.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Okay.
And for what it's worth, I do take that very seriously. I am relatively new to Montgomery County. In my previous life, I was the code enforcement solicitor for the city of Pittsburgh. So I do not take conversations like that lightly. I will bring that back to our client immediately.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
That's
I mean,
appreciated.
property maintenance issues, not maintaining the property, things like that.
Absolutely.
Since you're I want to make sure everybody's well aware of this. There has been 2 stop work orders issued for this property. The first one was that, we decided to cut a hole in the side of the hill on Church Road and make a driveway without permits and all that. And the other one was the owner purchased the property and he rehabbed the inside of it completely with no permits.
Okay.
So we've worked through that, but there are still some outstanding issues that need to be rectified, please.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lynch. And Ms. Steers, obviously, I'm sure you're going to take that to your client, but it certainly raises concerns about if this were certainly we consider, and I would expect the zoning hearing board is going to consider in determining whether these variances or whatnot are going to be properly maintained, considering the circumstances surrounding it. So thank you for taking that to your client. Commissioner Ziegenfeld, is in your
Well,
ward.
let me yield to
step on your
Commissioner
toes.
Rappaport first.
Okay.
Her
Fair
hand was up quickly, so she usually gets to the heart of the matter.
Not
Commissioner Rappaport.
necessarily. No, I do defer to also the questions and the issues that have already been raised. One of the things I didn't see raised in any of the materials was, and this is just a question for our staff, would the excavation and the additional vehicular vibrations and other things behind, or in the new areas, have any detrimental jeopardize the structural integrity of the very old structure?
I'll take that one if I can. Good question, Commissioner. Thank you for raising that. Where the driveway has been is a good distance from the existing structure as far as foundation issues and everything like that. And actually, the interior improvements that the owner made actually pretty much saved the property if I can. I mean, it was, to the fact where the one side of the one twin was still being worked on when we went there. And, you had to walk gently on the floor for fear that, you were going to fall through the floor. So the improvements that the owner has made to this property on the interior has definitely brought life back to it and extended the life of the property. If that answers your question.
That
And
helps.
Can I also add to that?
Sure.
One of the planning commission's comments also did echo that concern. One of their comments was to do we have the screen sharing capabilities that I could pull up a plan quick?
I don't know that's necessary. You can just
Okay.
tell us.
Okay. There's an existing retaining wall that's along the front of the property. Part of that wall would have to be removed to make room for the driveway. So there will be some grading needed between the new driveway and the house. One of their comments was to extend the wall into the property to try to minimize some of that grading influence on the foundation. So that is something else that we would take into consideration when designing the retaining walls, that we would design the walls on that side of the driveway with consideration to the antique building.
if I may add real quick, again, I did share as part of the planning commission that this property was determined as part of a historic resource survey as a contributing property in the history of the township, irrespective of the fact that it's not registered as such. But the same thing too applied for the wall. And as part of that survey that was done, there was a date noted on one of the stones in the wall saying 1767. So the moving of the wall is kind of, I mean, I hear what you're trying to do, but at the same time, we need to take into consideration preservation of our history,
Right.
irrespective of whether it's recorded at the state level or not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sekwongu. Commissioner Zieggenfeld, now it's your turn.
Okay. Both to the engineer and also to the lawyer, Ms. Deers and Mr. Brenzinger. So question, are both of these, I guess, residences being set up as single family dwelling units?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. Does Kinsman Corp have other properties in the township, in the area in particular? They aware of that?
Sarah,
No.
can you comment on that?
No, I actually don't know if he has any other owns or has restored any other properties in Cheltenham. I do know that he has done work in Philadelphia.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I think with the input from staff, in particular, the concerns about code enforcement and violation notices and that kind of thing, I think that we, while I'm not proposing that we send our counsel to the zoning hearing board, I'm asking the council to communicate to zoning hearing board the nature of our concerns. They have a lot of issues to deal with at ZHB based on the variances that are being requested and based on the input that was provided by the planning commission. So I'll just ask that there be a higher sense of urgency from the board to and via the planning commission points that we at least put that on the table so that the zoning hearing board understands that we have some reservations given the history. So with that, I would recommend no action, but ask that our council does communicate with zoning hearing board to express some of the concerns, both from tonight's meeting, as well as some of the questions that were raised by the planning commission. And obviously, when it comes, if it does get approved by zoning hearing board, that when it comes back to us in land development, we will be much more vigilant and assertive about complying with our saldo in order to make sure that there's no repetition of these kinds of behaviors.
Thank you, Commissioner Zieggenfeld. So we have a motion for no action, but I agree. I think it's critically important that the zoning hearing board is aware of the concerns that have been raised, not only by the board, but certainly by Mr. Lynch and Mr. Sekawungu in terms of the notice, the violations, as well as the historic considerations of this property.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Zieggenfeld. Before I call for a vote, are there, I saw some people pop up. Are there neighbors of this property that wanted to weigh in? Okay, just making sure. Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion from Commissioner Zieggenfeld, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Steers. Thank you, Mr.
Thank-
Brensinger.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your time. Have a lovely night.
You also. All right, item 1B, appeal number 24-3780, Daniel and Veronica Blum for 400 Deaver Road. Mr. Sekawungu, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is going before the zoning hearing board specifically because of a proposed pool house that is permitted as part of swimming pools. However, the department felt as part of this review that this pool house was a little on the larger side. It's over 25% of the primary dwelling and needs to be reviewed as part of the accessory uses in our ordinance. In addition to that, there's a setback infringement that needed a variance. This was before the planning commission, and the planning commission made a recommendation for no action before the zoning hearing board. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Friedman, who's representing the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Sekawungu. Good evening, Mr. Friedman. If you want to give us a very brief overview, we've all read the materials, so
Sure.
you can have the floor.
Good evening, Commissioner. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. So I represent Daniel and Veronica Blum. They own 400 Deaver Road. The property consists of about 3 acres of land, and there's a 3-story house. The house is about 110 years old, was purchased by the Blums May of 2014. Blums have 2 children who attend Cheltenham Township public schools, and they've been active in the community. The Blums have made substantial improvements to their house and are interested in furthering their investment in the Winco property by adding a swimming pool and cabana. So even though the property is somewhat large, the house was positioned when it was built so as to create a large front yard, a large side yard, and a narrowing rear yard. As a result, there are limited options for siting the pool and the cabana. The project architect, Jeff Regan, will discuss this further in a minute. So we applied for a zoning determination with Township. The planning department came back and classified the cabana as a residential accessory structure. And as Henry just mentioned, that resulted in a need for some variance relief. We take exception with the determination that the cabana is a residential structure. The ordinance defines accessory structure using words like decks, fences, and sheds. And in the residential accessory structure provision, of the ordinance, which is found in section 295-405, use A1, the following are examples of a residential structure: detached garage, storage shed, or gazebo. No mention of cabana. On the other hand, there's a section in the ordinance which specifically addresses cabanas and pool houses. That's found in section 295-405A 9M. The pool and cabana provisions include their own dimensional requirements, such as where can the pool be located, limit the cabana to a single-story structure not exceeding 14 feet in height, limit the use of the cabana to only two of the following elements: one, a bedroom, two of the following elements: a bedroom, bathroom, and a kitchen facility. So the cabana that's being proposed by the Blums complies with these cabana house provisions. So to summarize, the application pending before the zoning hearing board includes an appeal of the decision of the zoning officer, as well as a request in the alternative for a rear yard variance and building area variance under the accessory residential structure provisions. So I also need to bring to your attention section 601.3 of the municipality's planning code. And what this section says is, in the event there's some inconsistency in a zoning code, so one section says one thing, another section says something else. So the language has to be interpreted most favorable to the property owner. It's clear to me that in this case, there's an inconsistency, and the property owner gets the benefit of the doubt. We are still nevertheless, requesting relief if needed for the rear yard variance, 25-foot requirement. We have about 18.5 feet, and also the building area. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jeff Regan. He's the project architect. He'll spend a minute telling you why the pool and cabana were designed and located where they are.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Regan, Mr. Freeman gave you a minute. I'll give you just that.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think he covered almost everything. First, I do want to correct something. I am not the project architect. It's my wife. The Blums engaged Tallulah Regan of Tallulah and Bird to design the pool house. I've been part of this, but she is unavailable tonight, so I'm here on her behalf.
You better do a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A lot on the line here. Dan and Veronica made it very clear at the beginning of this engagement that they really want this pool house to be of a high quality and blend with the existing home. Obviously, they had their parameters for what they were trying to accomplish with the pool house and accommodate. The pool house was designed, as Mr. Friedman said, to absolutely conform with all the rules and regulations associated with the cabana and pool house. So we were extremely careful to make sure that there was no variance needed. We did then file a zoning determination request prior to moving from the schematic design to the construction document process, as we would typically do. And that's when it became, we were made aware of the fact that the township was classifying this as an accessory structure under A1, as opposed to 9M, which specifically calls for pool houses and cabanas. Other than that, you have the plans. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Yeah, I'll start off, and then I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Rappaport. I understand it's in your ward. Mr. Friedman, Mr. Reagan, Ms. Blum, thank you for joining us this evening. My question is this. I understand the legal argument about whether it's a cabana or a accessory residential structure, and I'm not really going to get into that part of it, but regardless of what we're calling it, it is a large structure, and encroaches within the setback, regardless of what it's being called. And I don't think the setback change. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the setback changes based on what we are classifying the building as. So if that's the case, then what is the purpose of, or what is the hardship, or whatever the standard is for having such a large structure, whatever it's called, encroach in the setback from the property line?
So the setback does change. Under the pool house and cabana, it needs to be 10 feet from any property line, any adjoining property line, as opposed to under A1, it needs to be 25 feet. So it does. Again, I want to reiterate that if this was interpreted, if the pool house was considered to be part of the pool house and cabana language and verbiage, it is 100% compliant. There is no variance needed.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you very much. Commissioner Rappaport, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of questions, but first, it is beautiful.
Thank you. I will pass that along.
The idea and everything, it looked, at least from the drawings, very nice. But I think part of the concern with both the setback and the size is, and present ownership aside, when we give zoning relief, my understanding is that that relief goes with the land. So when you're talking about a property, a building structure that is almost 2,000 square feet, that's bigger than many homes, and even some homes, even in the neighborhood, although most of the homes are a good size. And I worry about the zoning going forward without conditions about overnight stays, using it as a bed and breakfast, or it's the use issues that go with the land. I mean, certainly it's big enough to accommodate not only a kitchen and bathrooms, but also certainly in-laws, overnight, guest rentals, all kinds of things. And I worry on behalf of the neighbors and the future about the kinds of parties or the kinds of activities that legally then could be, or not legally, could be going on there. So again, I would, although I'm inclined to go with no action and let the zoning hearing board deal with that, I am concerned, and just for the sake of making sure I understand. So it would be 15 feet from the nearest property line. Is that correct? Or clarify that, and which properties? Because I wasn't sure I could figure that out from the drawings that I saw.
I believe it was more like 18 feet. Again, we were designing, making sure it did not get closer than 10 feet. And I believe that the setback now, if it was being considered an accessory structure, would be 25 feet. And I believe that we're 18 feet. Those numbers are roughly correct.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I would like to point out one other thing. We're talking about the size of the structure, but under the A1, if it is interpreted as that, I believe that the footprint can be 50% of the main house. The main house footprint is 3276, which means the footprint would be half of that. But the accessory structure actually allows a height of 25 feet as opposed to 14 feet, and it is not limited to a single story. So under the interpretation of the A1, this could actually be a 3,242 square foot structure and be totally compliant, and also 2 stories. Now, the Blums are not interested in doing that. One of the criteria that they had was having this, blend both from the perspective of looking from their home, but also from the neighboring homes. And the lower building just nestles into the landscape and the surrounding stone walls much more seamlessly. But again, if we went with the A1 that the township's suggesting, it could be considerably larger and totally compliant.
How many properties are on the boundary? How many in other words, how many neighbors would be?
I'm going to say 4, but I think that Veronica Blum is on this call. I think she would be better qualified to answer that question.
The properties that touch this area is 3. The portion that we're talking about.
And I think
There
some
are
of
more
them
properties than that touch our property over towards Deaver.
Right.
But this part of the property is only 3 properties.
I think some of the neighbors are here online, but I don't know. All right. Well, for now, that's I see other questions, so done for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Commissioner Zieggenfeld and then Commissioner Norris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So since the applicant is online, Ms. Blum, will you warrant that I share Commissioner Rappaport's concerns that this addition will not be rented or used outside of what is the township's definition of family relationship? So it's not going to be done to have any commercial or outside purpose and comply with how we identify as family relationships?
That is certainly not our intent to do, no.
So that's a yes to warranting?
Yes, we are not going to be, are you asking if our intent is to rent this out? Definitely not.
Thank you.
We're not even putting any sort of bedroom in here. There's no.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Zieggenfeld. Thank you, Ms. Blum, for that affirmation. Commissioner Norris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Blum, have you heard from, have you spoken to the neighbors? Do we have feedback from you mentioned 3 neighbors that are on that side of the property?
We have spoken with all 3 of the neighbors that touch this portion of the area of the property that we're talking about, yes.
And what's their opinion as far as you moving forward with it?
They all have asked us questions. We've walked the site with them and they said good luck and they'll come visit. They're not here right now, so otherwise I'd have you talk with them, but yeah, they're okay with it.
Okay, thank you.
And certainly they have every right to attend the zoning hearing board proceeding if they wish. Okay.
And we've spoken with all of them, with all 3 of them.
Thank you.
Only
for that.
one asked to walk the property though.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Mr.
Just a
Sinkler.
quick comment, Mr. Chairman. Again, this application will be subject to an earth disturbance permit application and submission, and potentially, they may need to get into a stormwater agreement as part of a recorded document. So just letting you know, there's been concerns by some of the neighbors that have called into the township and to look at the plans because the property is set up on a hill and water basically flows downhill towards their properties. So that's a concern that's being raised, but it will hopefully be mitigated as part of the stormwater review process.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Rappaport.
Yeah, so I had this written down and I didn't get to it. Does it come back to us for saldo?
No, not because it's a single family dwelling. The municipal planning code does not require that it come back, but because of our regulations as part of our stormwater, because the disturbance will be more than 250 square feet, they'll have to go through an extensive review process as part of an earth disturbance permit application.
So they're not, because of the various, yeah, and I don't know if it's if the area has a lot of trees or whatever, they're not subject to any of the tree replacement visions of SALDA, like that. It's just strictly the stormwater issues.
Correct. That it's just going to be strictly stormwater related review for compliance.
Yeah, so there is a lot of, yeah, that'll be a lot of impermeable surface coming in. So
Right.
I hope the family will take that into consideration along with our various issues, we'll say stormwater issues, and maybe consider donating a bunch of trees to the township in our various parks and stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe it's time. I don't know if you're calling on anybody else, but I'll put a motion for no action, and hopefully, if our counselor is talking to the zoning hearing board solicitor about the first one, he can also reflect whatever concerns were raised.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Rapport. So we have a motion for no action. Mr. Diazio, there was an agreement by Ms. Blum for a condition that there be restriction on renting out this building. Would that be something we would include in the motion?
You can. I did make a note to
Okay.
Raise that issue with the zoning hearing board. I'm sure they'll ask that question at the hearing.
Fair enough. All right, so we have a motion for no. I'm sorry, Mr. Sekawanga.
I wasn't sure if there were any neighbors other than the three that are not available that may want to say something. I'm not sure.
Oh, thank you.
I have
should have
raised my I've raised my hand. If you can hear me, I would like to speak.
Mr. Collins, I did not see you raise your hand, but I apologize. You may weigh in. Please identify where you live, if you don't mind.
Yes, we live at 213 Barker Road, and have been on the property at 400 Deaver many times with good friends of ours owned it before the Blums. One concern that we have from our knowledge of that property is that although it's a fairly large property, which might lead you to believe that it's got plenty of space to deal with infiltration and stormwater issues, the area, as it's been said by the owners, is that they believe is most suitable for their development, does sit at the back end of the property closest to Barker Road. And it does, at least according to its apparent topography, it is a property which is sited so that it would not drain toward Deaver Road. It would rather drain toward Barker Road, a road which does occasionally experience some heavy water issues. We believe that our property would in fact be located in what they would call the down gradient direction of any water flow. So we really only have two concerns. We're not expressing at this time any objection to any particular set of plans, but two things jump out at us. One, the site plans that we've seen in this project don't appear to meet fully the requirements for designating the specific locations of the walkways, the patios, and the pool club and cabana with respect to the various neighboring properties. And it doesn't really allow us to take the kind of look that we would like to take at how stormwater may flow. We've also been told that the stormwater management plan by the township may not be subject to neighbor review, which would concern me greatly since, first of all, I think under Section 302 of the Pennsylvania Right to Know law, we would ordinarily be expected to have access to those planning documents as they're developed. And as an active environmental lawyer with significant experience in stormwater management issues and a neighboring owner down gradient from the property, I would expect and like to see those plans to see what it might do to the neighbors downstream on Barker Road. And just sort of as the final comment, I would like to note that you can file a plan and call it a pool house or a cabana, but there really needs to be some willingness to work with the township, I think, in dealing with issues as important as stormwater management as they may arise, and with the neighbors to the extent that that's appropriate, because this property is so far from the normal definition of the size and characteristics of a cabana or a pool house that to argue that the A9 use is the dominating and controlling feature under the municipality's planning code, I think is a little disingenuous to all of us. So I'm hoping that it'll all be resolved in front of the zoning board, but I would like to have more of an effort made to get us more information about the stormwater management plans so we can make sure that they're going to protect the downgrading interests of the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. And certainly you should feel free to liaise with the planning and zoning department to discuss the stormwater, your concerns about stormwater and the process for stormwater review were this to be approved by the zoning hearing board. So I would encourage you to do that. Mr. Sekawongu is the director and is available at the township.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone in the public or otherwise? All right, seeing none, there's a motion on the table for no action with the expression of some concerns, but also a commitment from the homeowner. So with that, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman, Mr. Reagan, Ms. Blum, and thank you, Mr. Collins, for your comments. All right. Moving on to item number 2, review of zoning hearing board decisions. Appeal number 24-3776, Manuel Chakliaza for 316 Sinkler Road. The decision is attached. Mr. Sekawongu, do we know whose ward this is in? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Henry.
My apologies. This is in Ward 2, as is all the other two, the other two zoning hearing board decisions. Yes.
All right, you got a hat trick there, Commissioner Lewis. So, do you want to? Is there any discussion, Commissioner Lewis, or do you want to make a motion for no action here?
I want to make a motion for no action.
Okay, we have a motion for no action. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of no action on item 2A, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, item 2B, appeal number 24-3777 for Target Corporation, 2450 Shoppers Lane. Back to you, Commissioner Lewis.
So I have a question about Shoppers Lane in general that may not be relevant to this. Is this a time to raise that or no?
No, I don't think so. Probably in new business, or we could certainly do it offline.
Offline. Okay.
Okay. So action, no action on this
I
one?
move for no action.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion for no action. Any comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, all in favor of no action, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, appeal number 24-3778, Fox Lane Homes LLC for 1777 Willow Grove Avenue. We all know it very well, but not as well as Commissioner Lewis. So, Commissioner Lewis.
I'm happy to know that all the stakeholders, and there were many, everybody was lawyered up, the neighbors, the township, the developers, but with the support of everyone, including the commissioners and the township, it seems as though the major parties, the developer and the Lavrock neighbors, were able to come together and agree to a plan to move forward. What's really exciting about this, I think this property, for decades, many presentations have been made for various developments on that property, and they didn't get far and looked like this is moving forward in the right direction. I would ask Henry, is there any reason to not move forward with no decision?
No, not at all. This will be before the board as part of a land development in the near future. So I don't see any issues. They did incorporate the age restriction as part of a recommendation by the board as well.
They agreed to 43 homes versus 40.
43 homes, age qualified homes, the
Yep.
age restriction.
Yeah.
Yes.
No action. I move, Mr. Chair, for no action.
Well done, Dwight.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a great success, successful process. It was a lot of work, and I know Commissioner Lewis and others, both staff and commissioners, really put a lot of time into this. I know the applicant and the neighbors put a lot of time into it, and just a great outcome all around. Yeah, Commissioner Lewis.
I appreciate that, but I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge Ed Diazio, who is absolutely phenomenal, and he can represent me anytime.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And he does every day. With that, we have a motion for no action. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Moving on to item number 3, receipt of the monthly Citizens Committee meeting minutes, the Planning Commission for January 27th, 2025. Any comments or questions there? Seeing none, I'll move for acceptance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there was no meeting of the Bahar in January, so nothing there. Number 4, receipt of the Planning and Zoning monthly reports for January 2025. There's an attachment. Any comments or questions there? Seeing none, I'll move for receipt. All in favor say aye.
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 Next, report of the building inspector for January 2025. There's an attachment there as well. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll move for receipt of the building inspector report for January 2025. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 6, report of the code administrator report for January 2025. Anyone want to put Scott in the hot seat? Nope, he wants to put himself in the hot seat. Go ahead.
So it's been a long time since we've seen snow. We had after the last storm an overabundance of complaints that the police were receiving, we were receiving, and we ended up with a total of 17 notifications and warnings sent out for the first, being it's the first snow. But it just seemed like every time the phone rang, it was a complaint of a neighbor not shoveling. So, please shovel your sidewalks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Scott.
It was particularly bad this past week. It seemed like everyone forgot how to shovel.
It was a tough one because the weather, it got cold right after, but absolutely right. It's really important, and unfortunately, the message is going out, and there's only like 4 people on the Zoom right now. But it is important to get that message out because we do anticipate having some weather over the next.
Jeff, I thought I heard you offer to do shoveling.
No, you heard that, Jerry? Make sure you shovel.
Right.
Jerry, you and Emily, make sure you're out there shoveling.
That's right. Okay,
Motion to
good.
accept the code administrator's report.
That's right. So let's all accept the code administrator's report. If you're in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Is there any old business for building and zoning? To quote Commissioner Pransky, it's all old at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, closing old business. Any new business for building and zoning? Seeing none, I'll open it up for citizens forum.
2 outstanding citizens.
Well, if that's it, then I'm gonna move for adjournment and say go birds. And if you're in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Aye.